I used to have two friends, and one of them tragically died. Now, growing up, I used to have a lot of friends, and they were school friends, obviously, and but you would consider them friends at the time because you're a kid, so you're growing up, and you think like, my friends will last forever. We're gonna be forever friends. We're gonna see ourselves get married, kids, and like the whole thing, And I was always the one who was always kind of in between. I would hang out with person A, person B, person C, right? I never really fully committed to one person. I was trying to like scatter myself to see like with one I could fight more than the other. But the thing that I hated the most was the fact that they would invite me over for birthday parties. So from those 15 friends that I had, I believe I got, what was it, like 8 phone numbers? And some of them would like return my text and some of them wouldn't. They would move to like different schools, or like before I did that, I collected their phone numbers by either bumping into them in school while they were like at different classes, or I would call their home, be like, oh, can I have your number, blah, 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 blah. But some of them never texted back. And I was kind of like, oh, well, that's unfortunate. So from those, I believe maybe there were like 5 left. And then as time progressed, you get like new school friends and like other people that you hang out with. So you will collect those numbers. Then like the number went up a little bit. So kind of like your old friends were like replaced. But eventually that all just like watered down when I went to a technical school. And that's basically when we had like laptops and smartphones. I believe it was more like the whole like touchscreen thing kind of became a thing. So I had yet again a Samsung phone that had like full touch. And my friends, or like my older friends, they slowly just kind of disappeared on me. Like they didn't text back whatsoever. So I replaced them with new friends, and those new friends were also school friends, but they were like, I don't know, maybe there were like 4 left or something. And when I was done with school, it was like at the dawn of like Facebook or something. So people started stop texting, and then you got like WhatsApp and shit. And I would ask for the numbers, but I wouldn't get it, or they wouldn't answer me. And that's when I started to notice like how people kind of like moved on, like from being like that super excited kid saying like, oh, we're gonna stay in contact, to like people just forget about you, even though you tried your best to stay in contact. So it also kind of changed my demeanor towards them. I was like, okay, well, if you're not answering, then fuck it. So I will like throw away their phone number, like delete it from my contacts and shit. And eventually, when I was done with school, I had like, at the time, I had maybe 3 friends left. One of them moved, the other one stopped replying, and then I had 1 friend left. And eventually that person also left. And that's when I was really devastated. Because I would like see them on Facebook, like hanging out, like having like the best time of their lives with like their new friends. They were like going to clubs and stuff. And I was like sitting there, right? I was like, okay, so what about me? Like, why didn't you invite me over? Like why, right? So I would desperately try to like contact them and be like, hey man, how are you doing? No reply, nothing. I was like, okay, like fuck it. So I was all alone for a while. Then I met what was it like? So I have to say this before first, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense. My mom babysitted someone, and he's like a lot younger than me, like 8 years younger. Now he's like 25, 26. But so like mom babysitted him, and like until he was like 19 or 20, I didn't have any contact with him. He was like a nice dude, but like, like I saw him grow up. So he was kind of like my little brother, right? That's kind of how I still see him like that today. He's like my little bro. Very nice dude. We kind of have the same humor, same thoughts, same, like not the same personality. Like there are like some shifts there, but overall we're like really good friends to the to the part that I can consider him family, right? Until he was, yeah, was he 21 or like a little bit younger? Because didn't have any fans, and his mom told me that he also didn't have had any fans. He had like a couple of like lash outs and stuff. And I would go there occasionally on a Saturday or something, just to check up on them, like how they're doing. So kind of like got with him into contact and stuff. And eventually we would go to the cinema together. So it was a lot of fun. We kind of, like I said, like the same genre and stuff, but we like action, horror and stuff. So eventually we became good friends. And after that, I met another guy online, and he was really funny, extremely intelligent, and his name was Peter. But he was online, but he lived like a state further, like a province or like whatever you want to call it. So he wasn't really close by like my friend, because he lived across from me, so it was like a lot easier. But with him, I will play video games, and I will have like he was super intelligent. And he was like too intelligent for me, that sometimes he went into full detail and I wouldn't even understand what he was saying. Like, I would ask him for fun, like, oh, what is like the best vacuum cleaner? And then like 30 minutes later, I would get a thesis of like, this is the best vacuum cleaner because it has this type of power in it, so many watts and blah, blah, blah. I was like, Jesus, bro. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, it's just simple, right? But he also had like really sharp humor, and it was really funny to the point where I would almost pass out. And his name was Peter. And Peter was a very intelligent guy. He was a little bit younger than, like my little bro. Let me just call him that, because that's what he actually is in my perspective. But they were around the same age. And so I will play video games with him, like games like Command and Conquer. I played Killing Floor with him. And I remember very vividly that he bought me Killing Floor, because he just had a new job and he wanted to surprise me, and he bought me Killing Floor. I believe it was Killing Floor 2. And he bought it to me. He was like, oh, now we can like game together. I was like, well, that's very nice of you. You didn't have to do that, but I appreciate it, right? And so I would hang out with him back then on Skype, which no longer exists. Thanks, Microsoft. And I knew him for 3-4 years or something like that. So my other friend, he was kind of like more like in the background. He was really busy with school and stuff. So, but he was still, I still on occasion would contact him or like stuff like that. Or I would like walk to him. So I would see him like every 2 or 3 weeks on a Saturday. I would go there, right? And I would see him and I would talk to him. But it was kind of like more watered down. So with Peter, I had a really good friendship, and it was such a good friendship that he told me everything, and to the point where he told me that his mom had cancer and he was devastated. And I tried to try to keep it positive. I was like, like you have to be positive, motivated, so I was trying to be very supportive towards him. Unfortunately, his mom died, and that really, really like screwed him up. So he was like, I need a vacation. And his little brother and his dad, they went on vacation to France. And after that, we were supposed to meet up because he was building a custom PC, and he was like, we're going to have a good computer. And then, I don't know, maybe we could, like, he really wanted to make like a YouTube channel and stuff. Like he had this sort of like playbook, I guess is what you can call it, and he didn't want to show it to me, I guess, because it's not that he didn't trust me, but it was his project. And he had like all these plans of like us like living together in an apartment, shared a rent, and then like he wanted to have his own company and stuff. He had like bold ideas, and I was like, okay, sure. But then a tragic thing happened. He was in a canoeing accident, and he died at a very young age. I was also I was like in my mid-20s, and he was like early 20s, like it was like 19 or something. He just graduated, and it was absolutely tragic. It was also in the national news on French TV, and his dad obviously was completely devastated. He saw everything happening, and it's still really hurtful because I remember him sending me a picture of himself, of the area. He said like he was having a great time, it was kind of shitty weather, but that his little brother was really adamant on canoeing. And he was like, well, sure. Like he wasn't really in the mood, but he was like, well, he did that for his little bro. I don't want to give you guys the full detail because it's quite tragic, but practically what happened was, his little bro came into like a current, and he went like the canoe flipped, and he saw that happening, and he canoed towards him. He took out his vest, and he went down under because like the vest was keeping him up, and his dad was trying to, with all his strength, try to like pedal towards them, but because of the current, he wasn't able to get close to them, and he literally saw both of his sons drown, and that totally screwed him up, which obviously I think any parent would. But after that, I didn't know that, of course, so I was like still like apping him. WhatsApp was like the thing. I was like, he doesn't answer. Like, well, he must have like a great time, right? Because I did not know. So a week went by, and I didn't hear from him. I was like, this is weird. Like a week, that's so not him, right? And I went on Facebook, and when I still had Facebook, I don't have it anymore. And I was looking, and he didn't post anything, and I believe I didn't have him as a friend because like he never really used it. Neither did I. So it's not that I could like add him and see whatever. But I did check his post. It was like completely empty, so there was nothing posted. I was like, okay, I don't know. So out of nowhere, I had this sign in my head. I was like, well, maybe I should try to contact one of his family members because I don't get it. So I contacted his aunt, and she told me that he died. And I completely just like, I just sank through the entire earth. Like I just sank, and it was so hard for me, right? I was like, I can't believe it that he's no longer here. And it took me a long time to get over that, a really long time. I also fell into a depression for like 6 months. I couldn't do anything. That's how devastated I was. And I sent his dad like a handwritten letter because he didn't know about, like us talking, because we were just online friends, right? That was it. So I gave him my number. Then he called me, and he said that I wrote him a really beautiful letter, and he wanted to meet me. So I went there. I drove there, and it was really devastating to see his dad like that in like this really quiet house, right? He showed me his room. He showed me, where his room and like his little bro's room, and really weird as well was like he told me that a week after his death, his black cat died too. So I didn't know it was his particular cat, but it was his black cat, and that cat also died. So his dad saw it as a sign, that like the cat felt that he wasn't there anymore, so maybe died out of sadness. I don't know, if that's even a thing, but that. And he started talking about his sons and about his youngest son that he loved to paint and stuff. So we had a really nice, calm conversation, and then eventually he asked me if I wanted to visit his grave. And I said yes, obviously, but it's really hard for me because that will be the first time I would have met him, and then. under different circumstances than what I was hoping for. And when I saw his grave, I really had to, like, swallow, because it was really difficult knowing that he was laying there next to his little brother. And you can't speak to them, right? And so we were standing there still. We didn't say anything. We were just looking, and it was really well done. Like his dad really spared no expense on the graves. But it was really difficult, and especially after that, like going back home was like, it wasn't a relief or anything. It was more like it kind of went over everything you had from like all the things that you've talked about, like from all the conversations, to this tragic accident. And it took me a long time to be able to move on, and like I will always have it in the back of my head. I'll be able to look at things positive again and like move forward and be like, he's no longer here. It's tragic. It's sad. But like, if it was the other way around, I'm pretty sure that he also would have moved on. I think he probably would have thought about me from time to time, but he would have also moved on with his life and like build his career and have a family and something on his own. So, and there was this one thing that really helped me move on was he said to me that, I believe, and these were his words, so I'm quoting him, I believe that when our time comes on this planet, on Earth, I think we will live on somewhere else. And he told me that a week after his mom passed away. And he said that whenever my time comes, I will be reunited because my mom will live forward, or will live on somewhere else. And the thing that I also need to mention is that he had his mom's grave to the right, and then him and his little bro had like a unison grave. And there was like this sort of like river-esque thing in the middle that would like separate the graves. And so they were like in unison. So it was like, they were there together. And it was really tragic when I looked at the dates that his mom died 3 months before he and his little brother died. And even the most unique thing to me was that I did not notice until I saw the graves was they were born on the same date. That was January 10th. And they died on the same day too. And that was that was September 20th, 2015. So it has been 11 years. So they both were born on the same day and they both died on the same day. And it's like the most unique outcome that I've ever seen in my entire life, right? And it was on my grandma's birthday, September 20th. So that was also like a weird connection to that. So the year after that, when I was like sitting there, at my grandma's birthday, I was like, oh yeah, it's, like he's gone now for a year. It was really weird. It was like this sort of double feeling of celebrating your grandma's birthday, and at the same hand, I was still kind of sad that I no longer had my friend. So that's when I went from having 2 friends to 1 friend. And ever since then, I've only ever had 1 friend. But I'm okay with it. I'm at peace. And I was able to move on, and I'm able to speak about it easy now, and there are still certain things that remind me of him, like, I know Killing Floor 3 came out, I believe, last year. So there were like these little things that I really would have wanted to have heard his opinion on it, like how he would have seen it, Would have he liked the game, or would he have had mixed feelings? Because Killing Floor 3, because I know it's like sitting at a mixed or like negative rating on Steam. So I would have been very curious about his idea with that. And like I said, what really helped me was what he said about, like when we're no longer here, we will move on somewhere else. So in my opinion, in my head, I think about the two. I think like, no, maybe he's gone here, but in his interpretation of life after death, there is no death, we live on. So like I said, that really helped me move on. And I'm going to keep his memory alive in that sense that he thought that way, and it gives me peace, right? And like I said, there's still sometimes things where I think to myself, like, oh, it would have been so cool if I could have like played this new game with him. But it's like life just takes turns, man. Like life takes turns in ways that you can't comprehend. And it was one of the biggest losses that I ever had to deal with in my life, because of also he was so young, and like I said, I found my peace.